Hey everybody, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 1 class. Today we are going to be talking about word problems. This is probably one of the sections, one of the lessons that many students struggle with right here. And I'll tell you why. Because most of the time students are afraid of word problems. They don't like them. There's a lot of ambiguity to them. They have to figure things out, and it's a struggle. So instead of working through the struggle, and instead of trying, a lot of students will shut down and just not do anything. And I'm going to challenge you in this section. Don't just shut down. Read the question. Try to figure out what it's asking, go through the steps that I teach you today, and try to do your best to figure out the answer to these word problems. There's several reasons why they're important, but one of the biggest reasons is word problems are life problems. Most of them are based on real life situations, things that you'll face in your day-to-day life. Another reason why they're important is because you'll be facing these on your quiz, on your test, especially standardized testing that you'll take, ACTs, SATs, other things like that as you go to college and even in college. Most of what you'll be doing is all word-based, word problems. They don't give you the equation, they give you the words, and then you have to build the equation. So if you will, right now, go ahead and do your best to try to figure these out. It will help you a lot when you get higher up, when you get into college, and when you're trying to apply to go to college. So work hard, do your best, and it's not easy, and don't think that everything in life is easy. There's a lot of things in life that's very hard, and these things that are very hard can make or break you. And this is one of those things where in your future, if you don't know how to do word problems, you're going to struggle. And so I would just encourage you, work really hard on this lesson. Try to figure this out because it is going to be useful to you in life. All right, if you look down there at the screen, I have solving word problems, and then I've got a list of different things. This list is in your book. It is on page number 77. It's not exactly like the one in your book, but it's pretty close. Most of the things I tried to keep them pretty similar so that you can look there in your book, or you can look here on the screen. I would write these things down in your notebook. I tried to add some clarification, and I tried to change some words and things like that so that you can understand a little bit better. So solving word problems. Number one, the first thing that you want to do is you want to identify the known and the unknown parts of the problem. So we want to identify, what do we know? Okay, that's important, to know what you know. Sometimes we read it and we read over things and we don't realize, oh, I didn't realize they told me that. Oh, that's important. So make sure that you realize what you know, what they've told you, but then also you got to realize what's not known. What are they looking for? In other words, what are they trying to find? What's the missing number here, or what's the point to this question? So try to identify. Just read it over. Try to figure out, what is this question asking me? Number two. Now we're going to represent one of the unknown values. In other words, every time you get an algebra problem, there's going to be something that you don't know. There's going to be an unknown, okay? And so what you want to do with that unknown is you want to take it and you want to kind of set it aside and say, okay, this is what I'm looking for, or this is one of my unknowns, and it's going to be X, or it's going to be S, or it's going to be N, or it's going to be whatever letter you want to assign to it. Okay, so step number two, represent one of the unknowns with a variable. Sometimes your problem only has one unknown, and that's good. That's an easier word problem when there's only one unknown. Then you look down at number three. Number three says, represent all other unknowns in terms of the first variable. What's the first variable? Well, it's the one that we assigned in question number two. Okay, so if you used X, for example, you have to use X again. Maybe you're going to use, instead of just X, you'd use X plus 3, or X minus 3, or X times 3, or X divided by 3. But you have to represent, if there's multiple unknowns, you have to represent all of those unknowns with the same letter. Notice what it says. You cannot have two variables. So don't try to put an x and a y. It's not going to work. Okay, you cannot solve it if it has two variables. So you have to use only one variable. All right, number 4. Write as an equation. Write it as an equation. So basically, in other words, it was given to you in words. We're going to determine, okay, what's the x, what's the equals, what's all these different things, what are the different pieces, and then we're going to put the pieces together, and we're going to make it look like an equation. Step number 5, this is the step that we've been working on the last few weeks. Solve the equation. Okay, and you should know how to do that by now. And then step number 6, solve for any other unknowns. So let's say that there was something else that you didn't know. You have to figure that out. In other words, answer the original question. So go back. What I'd like to do is, when I'm on number 6, I like to review back to number 1. Okay, identify the known and the unknown parts. So in other words, what were they looking for? Were they looking for the x, or were they looking for the x plus 3, for example? And so you have to determine what it is that they're looking for, and then at that point, step number 6, you're going to solve for, you already have your variable solved for, but then you're going to solve for any more unknowns that are out there as well. All right, and so there we go. So let's try it. It's easy, right? No problem. Well, we'll see. 6 times a certain number is 96. What is the number? And maybe you can do that in your head and you've already got it figured out, and that's great. I can too. But let's use algebra. So we're starting off very simple, but we're going to use algebra to do this. Let's use our steps. Step number 1. Identify the known and unknown parts of the problem. What are you trying to find? All right, so what are we trying to find here? 6 times a certain number is 96. What is the number? So what are we trying to find? We're trying to find the number. Okay, we're trying to find what number times 6 equals 96. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so that was pretty easy there. We're looking for the number. Okay, all right, so step number 2. Represent one unknown with a variable. So let's call the number, since that's what we're looking for, let's call that n for number. What do you think of that? N for number. X, fine. T, fine. W, fine. A, fine. Doesn't matter. You pick the letter. I picked N for number. Okay. And so now what we're going to want to do is go back here, and we're going to say represent all other unknowns in terms of the first variable. Was there anything else unknown? 6 times a certain number. There's the number. Is 96. What is the number? All they want is the number. That's the only unknown. So there's nothing to do there in step number 3. Step number 4, we need to write this as an equation. Write this as an equation. Let's see here. So the certain number, that's the n. Okay, so let's point out some other important things. 6 is important. Look, times is important. There's the certain number. And then this word right here is very important. And then 96. All right, so let's break this down. Let's work backwards. All right, let's start over here with is 96. Is 96. How would we write that using algebra? Okay, well, we would write is always equals 96. So that's the easy part right there. Is 96. Okay, so we're done with that part. I'm not going to cross it off because I want you to still be able to see it. Now we can come back over here to this side. Now this is our left side of the equation. How would we write 6 times a number? 6 times n. How would we write that in algebra? Well, 6n. Just 6n. And then we would go up here and say, step number 5 is solve the equation. So let's go ahead and solve that thing. And basically all we have to do is divide both of these by 6. And we're going to get n equals, and that goes in 1 time 36, 16 times. N equals 16. So that gives us our answer. That was solve the equation. And number 6, solve for any other unknowns. And that's why I said go back up here to number 1. Identify the known and unknown. Well, we only identified one unknown. So when there's one unknown, we're done. Okay, we got the answer, and that is the answer. Now, what can you do? How can you check that? Well, I mean, you can just plug it back in there, and you could say 6 times, instead of a certain number, 6 times 16 is 96, and then just do it. Is 6 times 16 96? Yes, it is. All right, so we got our answer correct there. All right, here's a second example. 3 times the sum of a number and 8 equals 33. What is the number? All right, so if we're applying our rules again there, we would say, okay, what is the unknown and what do we know? Well, we know some things. We know that it equals 33, so that we know that we're looking for a sum, so there's some addition going on. And look, here's that of a number, So that's the unknown. That's going to be our n or our x. And then we have some other information here, 3 times. So there's all kinds of stuff there that that is good information for us. So let's go ahead and write our equation out. Well, I kind of combined a couple steps there, but basically step number 2 is, if we go back up there, it's represent all of them with the first variable. We only have one variable in this case. Step number 3. So step number 2 and 3 are kind of in one because we only have one variable. Step number 4, write it as an equation. That's where we are right now. So let's go back here. So 3 times the sum of a number. How would we write that? Well, we could write this over here first. So, oh, I forgot to circle 8. 8's important there too. Equals 33. Well, that's equal, right? Equals 33. There's our equal sign. Okay, so that's that part. 3 times the sum of a number. How do we write that? Well, 3 times, that's how we write times in algebra, the sum of a number and 8. What does that mean? Number plus 8. There we go. Equals 33. There's our equation. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to solve our equation. We can go ahead and distribute there. 3n plus 24 equals 33. Minus 24 to both sides. We're going to get 3n equals 9. And then divide both sides by 3. And we're going to get n equals 3. So n equals 3. Our number is 3. So at the end of the thing, after we solve the equation, we need to solve for any other unknowns. There are no other unknowns in that one, so we are good. We were just looking for what is the number. Okay, one number. All right. Next one. This is a good one because as I'm making this video, and my class that will be receiving this video in a couple days, they're going to be getting this video on Election Day in the United States. We're going to be doing a big election. So I put in a question here about the election. And I have changed the name of the candidates to conceal their identities, so you might not know who they are. But 2 candidates received 1,550 combined votes in an election. Dan Grump received 360 more votes than Mo Baden. How many votes did each receive? All right, so 2 candidates. So now let's go ahead and apply what we've been applying. So we have to talk about what's our knowns, what's our unknowns, okay? It's important to know that there's 2 candidates. It's important to know that they received this many combined votes or total. So that's going to be our is. That's our total. So that's is, so that's our equals. Equals 1,550. In an election, Dan Grump received 360 more votes than Mo Baden. How many votes did each receive? So we got to figure out what each one. Well, can we just go like this? Can we go, okay, Grump, we'll call him a G, and B for bad, we'll call him a B. Okay, for Grump and Baden. All right, so G and B. All right. No, I can't do that. Why not? Well, let's look at the steps. Let's go back way up here. And it says you cannot have two variables right there. Okay, we cannot. Can't do it. So we got to go back here and say, all right, so I've got to, instead of having a G and a B, I've got to express them in one variable. So maybe we're looking for how many votes. So we could call it V for votes if you want to. So we could call Grump votes. But he received 360 more than. So Baden would be votes minus 360. Or he's Grump minus 360. Votes minus 360. You could also do it, and this is probably how I would do it actually in this case. I like to keep things positive. So I would call Baden V for votes, and I would say, okay, Grump received 360 more, so I'd do votes plus 360 for Grump. That's just kind of how I'd break that down. And you could do it either way. The minus for Baden would work, or the plus for Grump would work. How many votes did each receive? All right, so now we're going to come over here and we're going to say, and this is something I think is important. This is something I like to do. So on these two-part ones, right here you have, I'm going to call this candidate number 1, and this is going to be plus candidate number 2. Does this make sense to you? Because what we have is candidate 1, all of their votes, plus candidate 2, all of their votes, equals 1,550. So in my mind, I say, okay, so I got candidate 1 plus candidate 2, and that's going to equal 1,550. And so here's what I would do. Candidate 1. Candidate 1 is Grump. So Grump is V plus 360, and I just write that. V plus 360 plus candidate 2, Mo Baden, V. All right, so candidate 1 is V plus 360. Candidate 2 is just V. And so then I would go ahead and solve this. I would combine my like terms. I'd have V plus V, 2V plus 360 equals 1,550. Subtract 360 from both sides, and that would give me, just a second here, I'm going to cheat real quick. I'm going to look at what the book has. All right, so that cancels, and I get 2V equals 1,190, 1,190, and then I would divide that by 2. And I would get, for votes, or these are Baden's votes, and I would get 595. All right, so that's my V equals. So I solved my equation, so I'm done, right? No, go back and look at your steps, and it says solve the equation, but there's another step. Solve for any other unknowns. Solve the question. Well, what was the question? Let's go back to the original question. How many votes did each receive? Ooh. Who do we have right now? Well, we have V. Who was V? Mo Baden was V. Okay, so let's go over here to V. So we have Baden. And we need Grump. So how many did Grump have? Grump had 595 plus the 360. $955. So Grump equals 955. So that would be your answer. Now, when you add those together, you should get the total number of votes, and you do 1,550 votes. So that would be the total of those two guys together. Okay? All right. I know they're complicated. I get it. But take it piece by piece, break it down, plug it into your equation, solve your equation, and then go back and answer all of the original questions to make sure you have all the unknowns. Okay? All right. Well, that's all I have for you today. I know it was a little bit longer lesson, but you did good hanging in there. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.